Good morning, everybody. I'm going to call the meeting to order. My name is Councillor Paul Ainsley. I'm the chair of the General Government Committee. We have quorum, so I'll now call meeting number 19 to order. Welcome, everybody. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and in person at City Hall here in Committee Room number 1. This meeting is also being live streamed on youtube.com at Toronto City Council's Live. For the land acknowledgement, I'd like to say on behalf of myself, the committee members, and our amazing staff, that although we are meeting in different locations today, the General Government Committee would like to acknowledge that the land we're meeting on is the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also would like to acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty Number 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. If you are registered to speak at today's meeting, if you could please listen for me to call your name. I'll be calling speakers in the order that they appear on the list. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the General Government Committee page at toronto.ca/council and clicking on the speakers box for today's meeting. For the members of the committee, just a reminder that clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and on the clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff are available to members if you need help with your devices. I'd also like to remind you to please submit, turn the page, and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at ggc@toronto.ca to help with any motions. At this moment in time, I'm going to ask if there's any declarations of conflict of interest. Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve our minutes from our meeting of November 20th, 2024? Moved by Councillor Holiday. All in favor? That carries. So we have 25 items on today's agenda, plus there's 2 new items of business to introduce. And I'm just going to switch pages. All right, our first item of business is GG 19.1, status of iOS AirDrop functionality on city devices. Actually, I'm going to hold that. I have a couple of quick questions. Next item is GG 19.2. This is an advertised and statutory meeting at 9:45 a.m. Cancellation, reduction, and refund of property or payment in lieu of taxes as of February 25th, 2025. So I will hold that down. Our next item is GG 19.4, amendment to blank. Sorry, did I miss one? I did. Sorry, GG 19.3, thank you, Matthew. Amendment to blanket contract number 470-23957 with Peter Young Limited, operating as IPS for grounds maintenance services at various city locations. Any holds? Can I have a mover? Mayor, need more coffee. Councillor Cheng. Number 4, amendment to blanket. Sorry, all in favor? Carried. Where'd my coffee go? Right there. I need it. All right, number 4. Amendment to blanket contract number 47024067 with 2281610 Ontario Incorporated, Downtown Ford for the supply and delivery of 24 latest model truck chassis and regular cab, 19,000 pounds or 8,618 kilograms, gross vehicle weight rating, 4-wheel drive, dual rear wheels, and custom utility body.
Hold, please.
Councillor Burnside. Councillor Thompson.
Councillor Thompson.
Councillor Thompson's holding number 4. GG 19.5, amendment to purchase order 6054751 with Atlas Construction Incorporated for major upgrades and reconstruction of the Scarborough Gardens Arena for the Park and Recreation Division in Ward 20.
Hold, please.
Hold by Councillor Thompson. Our next item is GG 19.6, amendment to purchase order number 6043796 with WSP Canada Incorporated and purchase order number 6052068 with Maple Reinders Construction Limited for the rehabilitation and upgrade of 7 Group 6 sewage pumping stations at various locations in Ward 3 and 4. Any holds? Can I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Holyday, that carries. Number 7, GG 19.7, amendment to purchase order number 605-2995 with Aquicon Construction Company Limited for the construction of the new Net Zero Rouge River Community Recreation Center, Childcare Center, and Joyce Trimmer Park improvements for the Park and Recreation Division in Ward 25. Have a mover if there's no holds. Moved by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? That carries. Next, GG 19.8, amendment to purchase order number 605-6433 with Stantec Consulting Limited for professional services for the replacement of the Glen Road pedestrian bridge and tunnel in Ward 11 and 13. Any holds? Can I have a mover? Councillor Chang, all in favor? That carries. GG 19.9, 300 Progress Avenue, award of Ariba document number 450210845 to Pomerleau Incorporated for the construction of a new multifunction paramedic station in Ward 21. Councillor Thompson.
I move that with great thanks and appreciation, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Thompson is moving GG 19.9. All in favor? That carries. Our next item is GG 19.10, award of document 451070518 to Pomerleau Incorporated for the construction of the new Western North York Community Recreation and Childcare Center for Park and Recreation Division in Ward 7. Any holds? Can I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Burnside. All in favor? That carries.
Mr. Chair, it's Peruzza here. If I could just simply thank both you and the committee and the staff for this. It's about time that that this gets done, and it's an exciting day for all of us here in Ward 7.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Peruzza. I'm sorry, my apologies. I didn't see you online. And I'm looking forward to going to the ribbon cutting when it opens.
I look forward to inviting you. I'm inviting all of you, quite frankly.
Perfect.
Happy day.
You too. Thank you. Next is GG 19.11, amendment to blanket contract 47024-775 with DragonAgile's Consulting Incorporated for the Atlassian product software licenses. Did I get that close? Can I have a mover? Councillor Holyday, all in favor? That carries. GG 19.12, award of document 4781235-686 to Clearway Construction for the basement flooding protection program phase 4 in Ward 19. Can I have a mover? Councillor Thompson, all in favor? That carries. Our next item is GG 19.13, non-competitive contract with Teleflex Medical Canada Incorporated for the supply and delivery of medical supplies and equipment for Toronto Paramedic Services. Can I have a mover and a seconder, or a mover, sorry. Moved by Councillor Holyday, all in favor? That carries. GG 19.14, award of document 47475317 for A to Walker Environmental Group Incorporated for the processing service of yard waste material and digester solid material for the solid waste management services. Any holds? Can I have a mover? Councillor Thompson, all in favor? That carries. GG 19.15, award of the provincial vendor of record and non-competitive procurement for the supply of paging. Who uses pagers? And mobile devices, accessories, and services. Moved by Councillor Holyday, all in favor? That carries. GG 19.16, non-competitive contract with Comprint Systems Incorporated for election services, applications, and maintenance. Can I have a mover? Councillor Burnside, all in favor? That carries. GG 19.17, suspension of Duran, Ontario Incorporated. We have a speaker. I will hold for speaker. Next is GG 19.18, potential litigation arising from the construction of certain sanitary sewer upgrades in the vicinity of 1215 New York Mills Road. There's a confidential attachment with this. Can I have a mover? Councillor Chang, all in favor? That carries. Number 19, 486 Front Street West, below market sublease agreement with Macaulay Center for Children for Childcare Services in Ward 10. Can I have a mover? Councillor Thompson, all in favor? That carries. Number 20, GG 19.20, 75 Hyde Avenue, expropriation of a permanent easement for the construction of the Black Creek Sanitary Trunk Sewer Relief System Stage 2 in Ward 5. Moved by Councillor Holiday. Thank you very much. All in favor? That carries. GG 19.21, 32 to 50 Larwood Boulevard, expropriation of portions of the properties for Stage 2. This is in Ward 20 and it comes with a confidential attachment. Moved by Councillor Burnside. All in favor? That carries. GG 19.22, review and recommendations on underground locates. Anybody like to hold this? Moved by Councillor Holiday. All in favor? That carries. GG 19.23, City of Toronto Employment Security Cards. I will move that since it's my letter. All in favor? That carries. GG 19.24, Public Reporting of Performance and Service Standards. We have a speaker on that? Okay, thank you. Number 25311, enhancements. I will move receipt of that. All in favor? That carries.
Sorry, you are adopting that?
Yes, sorry.
You're adopting?
Yes.
Okay.
All in favor of adoption? That carries. GG 19.26, award of document 49323579916 to Ellis Dawn Civil Limited for the rehabilitation of the Kipling Avenue and Islington Avenue and 3 FG Gardner Expressway bridges, ID 229, ID 272, ID 416, ID 417, ID 423 for engineering and construction services in Ward 3. I need someone to introduce this to the agenda. Councillor Chang, all in favor? Does anybody like to hold this? Or?
Chair, may I request a hold of that item because I have some questions, and just so that the staff have the appropriate people in the room, my questions are related to traffic and congestion management around the construction projects.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Number 26 is being held in Councillor Holiday's name. Our last item on the agenda is GG 19.27, award of document 486856516 to GFL Environmental Incorporated for containerized multi-residential collection of waste materials for solid waste management services. Motion to introduce. Introduced by Councillor Holiday. All in favor? That carries. Would anybody like to hold number 27? Moved by Councillor Holiday. All in favor? That carries. All right, I'm going back to the beginning, Matthew.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you. Just on a point of order and just in an effort to ensure the meeting can go smoothly and we don't waste a lot of time, I have some questions around GG 19.4. I wanted to understand the configuration, the way these vehicles look, and so on. So I wonder if staff, I don't know if they have, but if they are able to have some photos and giving us an overview as to, at least me, an overview of what these vehicles look like, and just for me to have a better concept, because all I have here is dollar amount and information about sort of truck chassis and regular cabs and so on. I have no idea what that actually means other than the expression of the words here. So I was hoping that if staff don't have that information, if they could, so that will help me with my line of questioning. Just trying to be helpful.
Okay, thank you. I will, staff are looking for that information. Hopefully we'll have it when we get to that item.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Thompson. So our first item is GG 19.2. It's a 9:45 a.m. cancellation, reduction, and refund of property taxes or payment in lieu of taxes for February 25th, 2025. And I believe we had one registered speaker, but yep. So our first registered speaker is Tina Vo.
Tina's not.
Okay.
And I'm just going to check and she's not responded to us.
So the speaker is not available for GG 19.2. Does anybody have any questions of staff on 19.2? Seeing none, can I have somebody? There's an amendment for 19.2. Okay. Oh, I love these. So the recommendation number 1 be amended to read as follows. The General Government Committee approved the individual tax appeals application made pursuant to Section 323 of the City of Toronto Act 2006, resulting in tax reductions excluding phase-in and capping amounts identified in the detailed hearing report marked as Appendix A, excluding the following applications. The first one is Ward 14, appeal number 202-41313, known as 227 Logan Avenue, roll number 1904-08-1-430-03100. The second one in Ward 10, the appeal number is 202-40604, known as 135 Liberty Street, roll number 1904-04-1-150-00410. And the third one is in Ward 4, the appeal number is 202-40449, known as 360 Dufferin Street. The roll number is 1904-02-1-350-02700. Any questions of the mover? Mr. Conforti will be answering any questions on my behalf. Seeing no questions, all in favor of the amendment? That carries. Item is amended. That carries. Thank you. So I'm just gonna, number 1. Sorry?
Yep.
GG status of iOS AirDrop functionality on city devices. Are there any questions of staff on this item? Seeing none. Sorry, Councillor Cheng.
So in the report, it looks like that there's still risks associated with AirDrop and therefore it's not coming anytime soon. Is there any hope on the horizon that this functionality could be restored to our devices, or is it that we just cannot use AirDrop for the future ahead of us?
To the chair, it's not a forever shutdown on AirDrop. We're working through some of the security challenges. So we do see a future where this will be enabled, but currently we don't have a solution that will help mitigate the risks.
Is there a projected timeline of how long it would take to mitigate the risk, and would that perhaps also be impacted by any updates that happen to the Apple iOS?
Chair, yeah, we are working with Apple in terms of receiving any updates based on the risk that's been identified. We do have on the technology roadmap to put in some further enhancements to help with data loss prevention, securing some of our applications. Now, it doesn't really change the risk we identified, but we are working with Apple along with other organizations to get that in place. So once that's in place, then we will adopt it.
Great, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Cheng. Sorry, that was the end of your questions. Councillor Thompson?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. the terminology about data loss has been mentioned. I'm just curious, when one uses an iPhone, it appears that often conversations that are taking place that either the proprietors, the manufacturers are listening to conversation. That's how they offer advertisement and so on. Are we concerned about that as a city in terms of information that's actually seeping out to, in this case, to the manufacturers of these devices? Are we not concerned? I mean, is it the same thing in terms of, you know, the AirDrop issues and concerns that we have?
Chair, the concerns that you're speaking about are typically with the apps that are on the phone, and which is why we do have a lot of our apps locked down. So there's certain apps you're not able to download. And given, like, Apple's got fairly good security, but what you're gonna find is it's the use of social media apps where that information typically gets collected, and this is why we take a very risk-averse approach to it. So no concerns at this time, yeah.
All right, then what about the connections, such as the you know, the device has a particular plug that you plug into it, and you plug it into, let's say, if you go to an airport or so, and there's an opportunity that information can be stolen. Are we concerned about that as well, or is there you know, efforts to address that as an issue, or is it not a problem?
Chair, from a cybersecurity perspective, we have done the assessments on, you know, those types of adapters, and based on the security we have on our corporate devices, we don't have a concern at this time that, you know, data can be exposed that way.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thompson. Other questions of staff on this item? Seeing none, I had a few. And part of the reason this is here, I'm trying to, so there seems to be a disconnect between our city's IT department and the clerk's IT department. And why I say that is I happily used a Samsung phone for many years. I was told by the clerk's IT department that Apple phones operated better with our multitude of licenses and platforms and programs that we use, and so I should switch to an Apple phone. And on the very first day I had my phone and I was showing it off to my son, and I needed a picture from him, and he was like, I said, text it to me, and it was like, Dad, just put the phone side by side and we'll use AirDrop. And I was like, what is AirDrop? And then there's no AirDrop on my phone. And when I went to the clerk's department, IT department, and I said, you know, you just gave me this phone, you said it works better with everything, where's my AirDrop? Oh, we disabled that, Counselor. There's security risks with it. And I was like, but you just told me to get this phone for that exact reason. So and then the city IT department, who's looking after all of this, so I don't understand, we're still sending Apple phones out, I understand, because my staff are getting them, but then we're telling people they can't use all of the device applications. So how does that get fixed?
Chair, just from a policy standpoint, we don't have a policy that prefers Apple over Samsung. And we are working closely with the clerk's IT to make sure we're following the same policy. So I did want to address that, is that we have a good distribution between the two. We've got almost a 50-50 split of usage. In terms of functionalities, it's very typical in large organizations where functionalities will be minimized or mitigated because of corporate risk. AirDrop is not unusual. There are other apps or functionalities as well that corporations will shut down just because of that enterprise risk. So we are following best practices. I know the CISO's office regularly connects with other large organizations to make sure that we're in line and we're keeping up with balancing functionality with enterprise risk.
Right, thank you. Speakers on this item? Really like to have my Samsung phone back, but. Well, they told me I had to pay to get a new one. after I paid for the Apple. All right, I'm going to move receipt of this item. All in favor? That carries. Our next item is, our staff ready for Councillor Thompson if we do item number 4? Okay. We are going to do GG 19.4, amendment to blanket contract 4704-067 with 228610 Ontario Incorporated, Downtown Ford. I'm not going to read out this whole thing again, for trucks. Councillor Thompson, you held the item. Questions of staff?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Appreciate that. And thank you to staff. They have been sending me some information, and I'm very thankful for that. Are you able to put the photos of the trucks, the vehicles up on the screen? Yes, probably, maybe, no.
Councillor Thompson, can you, oh, sorry, it's still being transmitted.
I
We
can
can't
see it now.
airdrop it,
Thanks.
so we're trying our best.
I can see it now, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
It's on the screen, Councillor Thompson?
Yeah. So my first question, what's the cost? You're buying 24 of these vehicles. What's the per unit cost? Is it over $300,000?
Through the chair, the latest purchase, it was 280,000 per unit,
280 plus tax, right?
including HST recoveries.
Okay. What exactly does this vehicle do? And why is it so expensive? If you could just help me to understand that. I have no real concerns other than I just need a better sense of understanding as to what we're paying for and how it's being utilized as a particular service vehicle to help the city. What do we do with it?
Through the chair, this unit specifically is custom designed for Toronto Water Division, for water service and investigation service area. Comes with, usually comes with class 5 F550, 4 F550 chassis and custom built body, including hydraulically driven valve machine, either front or side mount. These are customized units, and the original contract was established back in August 2021, around pandemic time. So approximately 30% price has gone up on a final product since 2021. So some accessories like tires, hydraulics, the price has gone up more than 30%. So going back to 21 and now 2025, there's a significant supply chain reflection. And again, this was the main reason.
I appreciate that. Thank you. But what do we use it for?
I'm sorry, I missed that. Can you say that again?
Sorry, what do we use it for?
These are for Toronto Water Service Investigation Division. They use it for turning big valves on the various water infrastructure. And currently we have 36 of these units in our fleet to support Toronto Water Division.
Okay. Part of my sort of need to have a better sense of understanding. So the design help us to do what when they go to a specific scene that has the need for this vehicle? Like, what does it actually do and how does it do it? And can we take a Toyota vehicle and drive to the location and do the same work? Or can you help me to understand that, please?
The vehicle's design itself, the cabin chassis comes as a crew cab. You can see on the photo, carries the entire crew of 4 people. They go to various sites. And again, at the back of the truck, they carry additional tools and accessories they need to support those activities. So it is custom built unit. It doesn't exist on the market. It's specifically built to the specification that was necessary for Toronto Water Division to perform those service areas.
So what's the difference between this vehicle in terms of why is it custom built for our needs? And you can't take a truck, let's say that's $75,000, buying it from Ford and provide the same feature? And I don't understand the significance of that. And sure, there's technical things. I'm just trying to have a better sense of understanding.
But again, to support those activities, vehicle size and configuration is necessary to meet specific ratings. Hydraulic-driven valve machine has a specific rating, and again, downsizing vehicle will not perform for that specific area, and this has been historically used by Toronto Water Division. So again, vehicle design and configuration is driven by end clients' needs, and again, including specific performance, safety, risk, and again, the cost is another factor always embedded in our budget to cover those necessary assets.
Okay. Oh, great. So I can't see my time, Mr. Chair. Just a final question to staff, and thank you very much for the information. I'm presuming that the back end of this vehicle, that's specifically designed for the City of Toronto, or is it designed just in general that anyone can buy this particular type of design if they have a similar need in terms of water? And so my question is, does that then help us with respect to a cost reduction over time? Because you talk about a 30% increase with COVID, et cetera, and I'm just trying to understand a comparator. If in fact we had something designed for us, we just put it on the back of this vehicle, or is each time you have to create a new design?
Through the chair, this design is very unique to the City of Toronto, but again, local body upfitters, they sell this configuration to other municipalities as well. So we are not changing this design on an annual basis. This is a very unique standard piece of equipment that we've been buying for Toronto Water minimum for decades.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thompson. Other questions of members of the committee on this item?
I do. Burnside.
Councillor Burnside, sorry, I can't see you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm actually more confused than when I started, so I apologize. So what, I thought you said that this is sort of custom built for the City of Toronto, but then you followed and said at the end there, it's not unique, it's other municipalities use the design, and thank you, Councillor Thompson, for eliciting that. So what makes it unique to Toronto? Like, everyone delivers water services. Why does Toronto need a custom design that other municipalities seemingly don't? You would think there's a standardized design. What makes Toronto special?
When I say to the chair, when I say the custom design, I meant by cabin chassis. The vehicles are built in stages. So the body itself, height, it's let's say per se custom built for City of Toronto for health and safety reasons. So operators can walk in and out for the average male and female height. It is something that is per se unique to the City of Toronto, but not necessarily limited. And it is readily available to other municipalities as well through this local vendor network. So it is standardized city fleet. However, it is a model that is readily available through production process to other municipalities as well.
So, okay, so if I were to re-articulate that vehicle's available and then Toronto tweaks it?
That is correct. Certain things are, we have a specific policies, ergonomics, health and safety items that need to be met, including per se step height, grab handles. Other municipalities, they may not have those requirements, but these are really specific policies in place that we have to follow and meet those in agreement.
Gotcha. Okay, that was my first question. So thank you for helping me understand that. And then my second question is, what are some of the functions this vehicle would be used for? Recognizing I don't know a lot about Toronto Water. So, you know, I see a box, but I don't really understand what that vehicle itself would assist. Like, what sort of functions would be performed out on the road?
To the chair, this vehicle comes with the main performance associated with this vehicle. It's really hydraulically driven valve machine, which is side mounted in the specific vehicle, could be front mounted as well. So for easy accessibility, certain areas that machine pulls out, and hydraulically driven opens valves on specific roads, infrastructure, supporting Toronto water infrastructure. So main purpose of this vehicle, it's really hydraulically driven valve machine that is mounted in that vehicle.
So hydraulic, sorry about that. It's hard.
Hydraulically driven valve machine.
What does it do though? Recognizing you're talking to someone that is not part of Toronto Water. I'm a layperson.
It turns those specific valves that has really under Toronto Water infrastructure. These are big valves that cannot be manually opened. So really how to make this process more convenient for the operators and have supporting equipment in place. This is actually designed, and this is not specifically designed for the City of Toronto. These valve machines are readily available on the market.
Gotcha. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Burnside. Other questions by members of the committee on this item? Seeing none, speakers. Councillor Thompson, you held the item.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the staff that has provided or at least attempted to provide the answers to the questions that we've had. I just want to clearly state the following, that it's really important for us to have a better sense of understanding as to the equipment that we're buying, as well as the full utilization as to the pieces of equipment. I'm sure our engineering and water staff are fully cognizant as to why and how these particular pieces of equipment are utilized. However, part of our job as members of this committee is to really look at the overall components of acquiring these particular types of equipment, but also the cost of it and so on. And when I look at the numbers, if we add the numbers and, we're buying 24 of these vehicles for over $9.6 million, that's a significant sum of money. So I want to make sure that when we make these particular decisions, and I guess I have no information to suggest that it's not the appropriate thing to do and so on, and I'm sure it is, but I want to make sure that when we make these decisions and giving the authority to staff to go ahead and make these purchases and so on, that we are in fact getting not only the best deal, but we're getting the best piece of equipment for the overall safety of certainly of our employees, but also the full utilization with respect to, how these particular types of equipment will function and the utility that we will get from it from a city perspective and utilization. Now, the staff has indicated that it's, I believe the number is $280,000 per unit. My numbers seem to be quite different, of course, with taxes, whether or not it's the, $9,523.86. When you divide that by 24, that comes out to about $396,827 and some cents. And equally, when I add the taxes to the $9,691,486,000, I get a per unit cost of over $403,811. Now, I'm just doing the math really quickly, so I could be wrong by a bit. So it alarms me when we're spending these types of dollars on these types of equipment, and I don't fully understand, even with respect to the explanation that's been given, the utilization of them in terms of the proprietary nature of the design in the future, and or if it's off the shelf and so on. I want to ensure going forward, and maybe this is something for the deputy city manager as a member of this committee going forward, I want to have more details. I want to have a better sense of understanding as to the equipment we're buying, the purpose, how it's being utilized. And while I acknowledge I'm not the expert in these area of water and so on, and I don't have any sort of concerns about whether or not staff are making the right decisions or not. What I do want to make sure and express my concern is to make sure that it makes sense to me, because it has to make sense to all of my constituents and so on, because it's their money that's being utilized to acquire these things. And so is there a necessity to have these types of vehicles that are uniquely designed and featured for the City of Toronto? Could we have something else that performs and that provides safety, provides the type of utility that we want to protect our staff, and as well as to respond to the needs that exist and so on? And I have no doubt staff really work hard. I just had a situation in my ward, Mr. Chair, just recently where the Bell Canada building at Pharmacy and Eglinton was basically underwater, and major pieces of equipment were going to be damaged because of a backup and a sewage backup and so on. I contacted Mr. Lieu Geronimo, and he and his team were out there, and I want to thank them for that, for responding, because that was very helpful. So that's not the issue. What I want to make sure that is that when we spend monies on pieces of equipment, it is that it's money that we'll spend. And in fact, if we're buying something that is, fancy and, looks great and so on at a great cost, that's not necessary to actually do the actual work, I want to make sure I have a comparative ability to compare and contrast and so on. So this is a reason why I raised this issue. And again, just reiterating, going forward, I'd like to have more details. I'd like to, a photo of this vehicle is helpful. I had no idea what it looked like, but I knew what we were being asked to spend the money on, but I had no idea on what the vehicle was and how the composition was, the structure and so on. So I'm thankful for that. And I will move the item, but I'm concerned about the issues that I've raised. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Thompson, and my apologies. We did have the general manager at Toronto Water here, and he left for whatever reason. So next time we'll endeavor to make sure we have the appropriate staff here for contracts like this.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, other speakers on this item?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just really have a question of you. So given that the general manager wasn't here, could you ask him to provide the differences in health and safety requirements between Toronto and other municipalities that are requiring some of these modifications? Because it's like,
yep,
I don't know why our health and safety is that much different than New Markets or anyone else, and I'd just like to understand that. Yep. So seeing as I couldn't ask him those questions, could you get that and ask him to provide that information, please?
Yep, I will have the appropriate staff send a briefing note to all the members of the committee.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Burnside. Sorry, Councillor Thompson, you moving the recommendations in number 4?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I am moving it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Thompson moving the recommendations in number 4. All in favor? That carries. Our next item is GG 19.5, amendment to purchase order number 6054751 with Atlas Constructors Incorporated for major upgrades and reconstruction of Scarborough Gardens Arena for the Park and Recreation Division in Ward 20, held by Councillor Thompson. Councillor Thompson, questions of staff?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank Mr. Dayton. We've been communicating by phone, but I just wanted to maybe just ask questions, and I'm happy with the answers that he's given me. But since I've held it, I want to just maybe just give him a chance to, or other staff members to give a chance to comment on this issue. When I read the report, it used the phrase and terminology as part of the description. It used SGR, stable good repair, on the number of the $2.824898 amounts. And I wanted to get a better understanding. When you issue these RFPs for work to be done, I'm assuming that the totality of the work that needs to be done is all part of the description. When I look at Birchwood Gardens, which I've spent many years in, and my son played hockey there, that was one of the areas that arenas that he utilized. So I know this area quite well. Having been aware that the entire arena itself was demolished, I was a little bit kind of alarmed when I saw the term SGR, state of good repair, in terms of spending money on doing work there. So I wanted to understand what's the difference between a full RFP and then coming back to us at a later date saying we need some additional funds to do additional work. Lighting, I think, was one, the green roof and other consideration. I'm just wondering why that wasn't incorporated into the original totality of the contract.
To the chair, this project was an evolving one. As council may recall, the original scope was the replacement of the roof at the Scarborough Gardens Arena. When that was deemed to not be feasible, there was a replacement project that was set out that was going to try and preserve some of the asset. That was also deemed to be unfeasible, and so the full replacement, including mechanical equipment and the pad, was determined the most cost-effective approach. Because of the timelines, we were trying to get the project advanced to minimize the period in which the user groups would be displaced. there were certain components that weren't anticipated, such as the green roof. And during the permit application process, the green roof was requested to be added. So that wasn't part of the original tender. Similarly, we weren't anticipating the extent to the damage to the parking lot. And so there's, restoration to the parking lot required, which we didn't anticipate at the time of the original tender. And finally, this amendment includes some contingency replacement because we had exhausted that through previous scope that was required on the project. So I would say all those things combined, we would expect this to be the last required amendment.
Thank you very much for that very detailed explanation, Mr. Dayton. I just have one final question. With respect to the security assessment as part of the funds that are required for this, what proportion of the $2.8 million will be going towards a security assessment, and what exactly is the security assessment? It's not really clear to me, so I just wonder if I can just a bit of a clarification on that, please. Thank you.
To the chair, so to clarify, the costs aren't for the assessment itself. Following the assessment that was done, it was recommended to add additional lighting and cameras. The cost of that within the amended amount is $150,000 toward increased security components within the facility itself and exterior lighting.
Okay, great, fantastic. Those are all my questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Dayton.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thompson. Other questions of staff on this item? Seeing none. Speakers on this item, Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I can move the item, and again, I want to thank Mr. Dayton for clarification, helping me to understand. The report didn't reflect, at least when I read it, didn't reflect it in the fashion in the way Mr. Dayton has explained it, and that's the reason why I wanted to ask questions about that. And I'm thankful for his explanation. As he has mentioned, this was an evolving process, and while I wasn't intimately familiar with the process, I wasn't on this committee, nor did I pay a lot of attention to it when it came forward, other than the fact that the work was actually being done, which I was quite happy for, because those young people who have utilized that arena for many, many years obviously have had to be spread elsewhere, and it has impact. So moving it forward in order to get this to be completed, I'm happy to move the item, and I'm very happy and thankful to Mr. Dayton for his explanation. It's really important that we have a better sense of understanding as it relates to these contracts and how they could impact our ability or our inability to fund them and or to do what's needed. But I also think it's really important that at the outset, if we could have a better sense of understanding as to what the total costs are going to be, and at the same time recognizing that there are things oftentimes out of our control, but at least we have a better sense of understanding of those issues. But the clarity is really important, and I wanted to make it really clear going forward on this committee. I'm going to be looking and asking questions about details that sometimes are not furnished in these reports, which really should be. It helps us to have a better sense of understanding of what we're spending on, why we're spending it, and comparing whether or not there are other ways in which to mitigate costs, not at the expense of safety, not at the expense of having a viable, in this particular case, arena that's fully rebuilt and so on, but ensuring that we do get the bang for our buck. Oftentimes it appears that as the city, and the city being the purchaser, we tend to have such higher costs because, Mr. Chair, when I was in the private sector, much of what we pay for a lot of things in the city, I would never pay that, would always want to have a better deal. And I do unfortunately find that oftentimes people do take advantage of us because we're a city of all these policies that says you have to have X number of quotes and so on, which is great. It's really important. But I do find that people do tend to take advantage of us. It's not fair. It's not right. We should be treated just like any other business, quite frankly, not because we're big government that companies and organizations want to take advantage of us by charging us more, inflating invoices, and so on and so forth. Again, I'm not suggesting that in this case that is the case or anything associated with that, I'm just telling you what I'm aware of and what many of my constituents are concerned about. So in this committee here, I think we have double the obligation to ensure that everything that gets approved is done so in a way that is in the best interest of the decisions that we're making and for all of the taxpayers, people who work really hard to bring $1 home and they lose 50 cents to government and they don't have enough because their overall cost to do things is going to cost them $1, so they need to make $1.50 more. So it's just a simple example, Mr. Chair, as to explanation as to why I'm looking at these things rather seriously, as I'm sure all of the members of the committee and members of council are. So I move the item, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thompson. Other speakers on this item? Seeing none. Oh, sorry, and Councillor Thompson, welcome to the General Government Committee. My apologies at the beginning. This is your first meeting, and welcome, and looking forward to working with you on the committee, as we're doing already.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Councillor Thompson is moving the recommendations in number 5. All in favor? That carries. Our next item is GG 19.17, suspension of Duran Ontario Limited. We have 2 registered speakers, Mr. Chris Ekonomu from Duran Ontario Limited and Louise Martinez from Duran Ontario Limited. And I'm just turning the chair over to Councillor Holiday.
Matthew, do you want to yeah.
Good morning. No problem.
Thank you for your patience just while I make the switch over into the chair's seat. And just for confirmation, one of you is Chris Ekonomu?
No worries. Yeah, that's why I wanted to say something. Chris is not available today. He's having a surgery. And we would like to know if I can read his part and do my part after. My name is Luis. Or
Martinez,
somebody else
let me
needs to
just
do it.
confer with the clerk on the rules on that. So confirming you're Mr. Martinez. So I also have you registered, so you would have 5 minutes.
Yes.
Is your intention you wanted to go longer than that?
Well, yeah, my intention is to do his part and my part.
To do his part and your part. I'm just confirm on the rules on that, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay, the clerk is just confirming, you're registered once for 5 minutes. You can read whichever part you wish. If somebody else wants to register for the second 5 minutes, we'll need an additional name to go onto the speakers list, and they can read that part. Is that clear? And did you want to go second, Mr. Martinez, and have somebody else go first?
Maria Economou, if you can.
Okay. So, Ms. Economou, did you want to go first or second?
I'll go first.
Okay, and I'll ask that you register with the clerk immediately after you're complete, or the clerk is coming around, but we'll just make sure that we have our meeting materials updated. So are you comfortable and ready to start?
Yeah.
Okay, so please begin as soon as you're ready and I'll commence the timer. Thank you.
Okay. Unfortunately, Chris is not here. He's having surgery. I will speak on his behalf. My name is Maria. All three of us are employees that represent the present and future of Duron, Ontario Limited. I would like to start by saying who we are. Duron is a company that has been in business for over 66 years. We offer different services through individual departments. Those departments are waterproofing, concrete flooring, epoxy, and building rehabilitation. The last one is the reason we are here today. Duron employs over 150 people. Our laborers are part of different unions, such as Lieu Local 506, 183, 30, and 27. We urge you to review the letters of support provided by these unions and the Building Trades Committee when deciding on the future of Duron. Duron has served the city for over 50 years, and we take pride in the good work and amazing projects that we've accomplished over the years for the City of Toronto. We have never received a negative report card. We have not had any major safety incidents. Just in the past 6 years, Duron saved the taxpayers over $6 million by being the lowest bidder. In the last 10 years, we have focused our efforts in obtaining contracts largely in the public sector, where we have been able to bring value, expertise, and knowledge to provide cost-effective solutions to the city in highly specialized projects such as tipping floors, waste transfer facility rehabilitation, and rink slab replacements. Sadly, we are not here to talk about our accomplishments. We are here to dispute the proposed 5-year suspension that, more than a temporary suspension, will likely mean the insolvency of the company. It will force us to close the doors, and in turn will affect the livelihood of over 150 families that depend directly on this company, and many more indirectly, such as our suppliers and subcontractors. We are not justifying the actions of a few individuals. In fact, we are deeply ashamed of the reasons that brought us here. We acknowledge that mistakes were made. We grew too fast, and we lacked proper oversight. That's why we took the situation very seriously and took actions by implementing a document control procedure, code of conduct, and code of ethics, which was reviewed with all employees. We have reorganized the structure of this department to prevent this from happening again. We would like to address a few points in the report for action submitted by the city. Financial impact. Despite that the report indicates there is no impact at the moment to the city, there would be a financial impact in the long term. As I said previously, only in the past 6 years have we saved the taxpayers over $6 million by being the lowest bidder. In multiple tenders, there have only been between 2 and 4 bidders. In some instances, Duron has been the sole bidder. Taking Duron out guarantees a higher price for each project due to the reduced competition. The audit. The report from KPMG clearly states that they judgmentally chose 42 samples. However, these samples were previously deemed high risk by Arcadis, the consultant. The report also says that they took samples of 4 projects, but found amount differences only in 2, that being groups 10 and 11. This is in line with our statements from day one, that this is an isolated situation and not a company-wide practice. Although the report states that only 10% of change orders were reviewed, the final value of inconsistencies is based on a complete audit of 100% of the change orders. This is in line with the list that Duron provided to KPMG. The city requested that one of the employees involved in the issue be removed from the project, and we did not comply. Our mistake was not explaining this decision to the city about our reasoning to keep him on board. We are not a large corporation that would allow us to substitute personnel and still proceed seamlessly on the projects. We were in the middle of a very complicated project, hundreds of change orders, multiple buildings that were in use, that even to date is still facing design issues that have yet to be resolved. Had we removed that person at that time, it would have impacted the schedule of the project and the end users. Additionally, that person was helpful in uncovering where the inconsistencies were made. If he was forthcoming or more remorseful and showed that even in the middle of all the added stress of the situation, he was doing his best effort to finish the project, is it fair to just terminate him? We have been cooperative with KPMG and provided all the documents as required by the MSA contract. As it relates to the interviews, Duron did not reject this request. We simply cannot force a person against their will. The access to emails would open up Duron to confidentiality breaches on other contracts and could expose our proprietary information, such as our road repair material, Duromastic, that took years to develop. Also, any estimating information that allows us to be competitive and directly impacts our survival.
Thank you, Ms. Economou. Are there any questions of the speaker? Seeing none, thank you for joining us. Mr. Martinez, I have you next on the list. You may proceed as soon as you're ready.
Yeah, thank you. So we also want to refer to the report for action that was produced by the city. In that report, they stated that the purpose of this proposed suspension is not to punish or penalize Durham. A 5-year suspension is exactly that. The city has stated that it has concerns in trusting Durham. However, in the same report, it states that there were no further inconsistencies found after this was brought to our attention. And this can be confirmed in the following statements from the report. In page 3, Arcadis and CREM implemented additional checkpoints to verify and review future change orders from Durham. In page 7, it says, once Arcadis identified the irregularities in 2022, the city instituted additional checkpoints and due diligence on all billing documentation submitted by Durham. Since that time, no irregularities have been identified. In page 9, it says, Durham was engaged in 2 contracts with the city for engineering and construction services in solid waste management. Divisions were made aware of the situation, and Durham's invoices for these contracts were closely monitored. I add, no irregularities were found either. In summary, we would like to make clear that we agree that the actions of a few individuals were wrong and unethical. We agree that we should be punished to avoid this situation to be repeated in the future. What we don't agree is the outright 5-year ban. We have already endorsed a severe penalty for over 2 years. There was a leak to the press that impacted our business and the relationships with other clients, banks, bonding companies, and more. The other 3 trade divisions in the company, who operate entirely independent from the Building Rehabilitation Department, have been also affected by these suspensions because they are not allowed to, they are prohibited from bidding for other GCs to work in city contracts. We have over $1 million held by the city, which is impacting our operations and cash flow. And all this is without mentioning the stress and uneasy feeling on our employees and family members. What we are asking here today is do not let this become abuse. Do not let people lose their livelihoods and make the taxpayer pay more for the same services. We learned our lesson. We took measures, we terminated employment, we demoted department manager, we implemented more controls and improved our processes. We are not opposed to a stricter scrutiny in future projects. We are not opposed to a stringent requests and protocols from the city in future projects. We are willing to work with the city under the circumstances they deem fair to let us be back. If the city's intent is not to punish and penalize Durham, we urge the city to take a balanced approach in their decision, one that considers that unintended harm of overly punitive measures will affect many innocent workers and families. Please consider the time we already served and limiting the penalty to the Building Rehabilitation Department. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Are there any questions of the speaker? Councillor Cheng.
Thank you. In the staff report, it says that Durham admitted to overbilling the city by $101,804, and that was based on an audit where only 10% of change orders were sampled. And then the city asked that an internal investigation, that data from that be shared, and I'm wondering, was that ever shared? Was there an analysis of, are these out of order? Okay. Was there ever an analysis of other billing? Because the $161,000 is based on only 10% sample. So was there a study of the other 90% internally, and were there results from that shared with the city?
Yeah, thank you for your question. It allows us to clarify many things. The $160,000 is for 100% of the changes in group 10 and 11. So yes, they first started the audit by selecting 10% of the changes as a sample, which was roughly 40, and they added 42. Now, what we tried to explain in our responses in our first intervention was the 42 samples that they choose at the beginning, it blows things out of proportion. Why? Because it's not that they choose 40 samples randomly. They choose samples that were deemed to be high risk by the consultant or that they already identify inconsistencies. So obviously you will have a very high percentage of occurrences in those ones because they are already kind of a review. Now, the 161,000 for 100% was the number that Durham provided after their full audit. And if you check the report from the auditors, their amount is pretty similar. It's basically the same. It's also important to know that they uncover all these inconsistencies or they review all these inconsistencies after we provide our audit, which shows the 161,000.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cheng. Any other questions? Councillor Burnside.
Burnside. Yeah, thank you. Through you. So help me understand, was it you, your company, that discovered the irregularities, or was it the city?
So this was brought to the consultant, to our management, in a situation with one change that they found something was irregular. And after that, we had meetings, we have discussions, we start doing our own audit, and the city was doing their own process as well.
No, but who brought this to light, the irregularities? Was it the city or was it your internal auditing system?
No, it was the city through the consultant.
Okay, right. Okay, so if the city, if you know the onus seemed to be on the city, had the city not discovered this, what next?
So, yeah, had the city not discovered this, which would probably not be something we will be discussing here today. But the reality is that once was uncovered, we took all the measurements to prevent this from happening again. And that's why we are
I
here
respect
today.
that. I'm sorry for interrupting. My time's limited. I'm just trying to understand, because, you know, there is a certain amount of trust when we write these contracts, and then there's a certain amount of cost to verify that there is no, malfeasance, I guess, ultimately. But you have answered my question, is what would have happened if had the city not taken the steps to do some more diligence? I guess it would have just gone on, gone on and on and on, and the cost would be a lot. But anyway, thank you.
No, but sorry, let me say something about that. The situation here, Councillor, is that this wasn't something that we were aware of the situation. We did not know people were doing this, and that's why we said from the very first time that this was brought to our attention that this is isolated to certain
Correct,
cases.
but that's the problem. They're your employees and you're not aware. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burnside. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Through you to the team of respondents that are here with us today. The reference is that 2 employees were responsible for these activities and action on behalf of your company. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So 2 employees only and exclusively. May I then ask, the extended cost that would occur to the city as part of this contract, the funds, where were those funds going? Were the funds going to your company, or was it going to those individuals?
No, it will come to the company.
I see. Okay. And in the commentary, I apologize, the lady who spoke, and I didn't catch your name. There was a comment about, and I think there was may have been a question about, you talked about proprietary information, confidential information, not being made available to have a dialogue with the consultant, KPMG. I'm wondering, Was it ever discussed that you could sign an NDA with them so that the concerns that you had about proprietary information, confidential information, that would be kept confidential so as to allow them the opportunity to be able to investigate and garner more information, which could have been helpful to both your company and or the city?
The conversation didn't go as far as discussing NDAs. However, they did.
Pardon me, I'm going to pause the time just to give some instructions. Our process requires that the deputant answer the question. I know Councillor Thompson referred to your deputation, but he's not able to ask you a question at this point in time.
Right, I'm not asking her, Mr. Chair.
It's okay, Mr. Thompson. Yeah, I'm just, Councillor Thompson, I'm just managing the room here, so just for the benefit of the speakers. Mr. Martinez, did you want to answer that question?
Yeah. Yeah, like she said, we didn't reach to that point where NDAs were disclosed. Discussed.
So at what point would you have gotten to that point, as you say you didn't reach that point where NDA would disclose, since you had already determined that you would not provide KPMG with the opportunity to delve in or investigate further? What was the objective then by saying simply no?
Okay, so we have the MSA contract, which establishes what is supposed or what we are entitled to or what they're entitled to. Since the first moment this situation started, one of the first situations happened was a leak to the press before everything, where we had any chance to provide information or put our point of view of these things. So these requests that came after, that are above and beyond, it's not something that is as simple as we say, okay, we have a product that we developed for many, many years and we invest so much resources and time, and then we're just going to expose it to everybody. Also,
okay,
we have our...
Well, thank you very much for that, sir. I do have another question. I only have a limited amount of time. In the report, it says your company overbilled and double billed and retained a known overpayment and failed to notify the city of an overpayment or duplication of payment within a reasonable period of time. At any point, did you or anyone representing your organization notify the city of the overbilling or the overpayment?
So when this was brought to our attention and we came to know about this was happening, after we did our internal audit, which revealed the 160,000, yes, we provide that to the city.
So may I just, my final question to you, sir, thank you. When I read the report, it appears that your company had gotten invoices from another supplier, and those invoices were of a specific sum, which were further inflated by your company and then billed to the city. Is that correct?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure, I can. Your company received a bill from a third party for service that you presented to the city, but the bill that you presented to the city was higher than the original bill that was received by a third party. Is that correct?
Yes, that was the case in 2 projects with 2 specific individuals.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I believe that exhausts the question list. I'll ask if there are any other speakers to this item. Seeing none, I'll ask members of the committee if there are questions of staff. Seeing Councillor Cheng.
So we're just looking at this report, and Duron is saying that they have remorse, that they have changed, and that they have effectively delivered their contracts after the situation within budget, and that this suspension could put their entire business and 150 people's jobs at risk. And I'm just wondering, what is the precedence for our city in terms of these types of consequences for this organization? When we have dishonesty that has happened and we do want consequences, is the punishment I guess, worthy of what we have deemed as unacceptable behavior of our contractor? Are the two weights? Is there precedence for how we weight the punishment? And in light of the risk to the business and the jobs, is there consideration of that in the consequences that we have landed on?
So, to the chair, naturally there is an evaluation that happens when we do, excuse me, when we do have these circumstances that occur. There is precedence, so we have suspended suppliers in the past. I also, again, to what is clear, this is not a punishment. This is not punitive. It is truly an accountability measure that we're using that is also, again, risk mitigation for the city, because there is a risk. There is a commercial risk. There's a business interest risk going forward on these contracts at this point. So, as noted, there is precedence. Currently, we have 5 suppliers, including currently Duron, so 4 other suppliers that are on the suspension list, and for longer terms for either similar practices against the supplier code, that vary, but we do take into account the serious nature of the occurrence to what the suspension term would be.
And it looks like from this report that there hasn't been I guess a level of collaboration after the discovery of these. So there have been requests for emails, identification of individuals, and so that lack of collaboration, has that also played a role in the decision of what this consequence is?
I would say that it played a role in the sense that we needed to get to the bottom of the circumstances, and that would cause issues in obtaining all of the information.
And at this point, do we have clarity of the entirety of the audit, or is that still in progress with KPMG?
So for this, I am going to kick it over to Pat.
To you, Mr. Chair, the audit is still in progress.
And with regard to the other organizations that have been suspended, have they continued as businesses? Do we know, or have we tracked that at all? Because when we work with a contractor, I assume we become a very large part of their financial sustainability. So just wondering if we have looked at the impact of those.
Mm-hmm. So I can't say that we have an in-depth research on it, but I can say for the suppliers that are currently on the list, many have continued to operate.
Okay. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cheng. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, do you stand by your recommendations in the report?
To the chair, yes, we do.
Thank you. What's the difference between a legal and moral responsibility as it relates to a vendor relationship with the City of Toronto? Do we have a legal responsibility to ensure that they stay in business? Or a moral one?
Matthew?
I'm uncertain if I'm the correct, to the chair, the correct person to answer this.
So I'll clarify to the Chief Procurement Officer. I paused the time.
Okay.
Councillor Thompson, your question was the difference between a legal and a moral responsibility. And I know that the legal team...
And the obligation of the city, Mr. Chair.
Maybe you could repeat it, and I'll restart the time, because there was an interruption in the line of sight to the question.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I was just trying to understand the legal and moral responsibility of the city to the vendor, and the expectation from a legal and moral responsibility of the city from its vendors and those that they do business with. Do we have a responsibility to ensure that they stay in business? Is that our obligation?
We do not have a legal obligation to have them stay in business. Our only obligations are anything that are contractual.
Right. So everything that we're doing relating to what's contained in the report is relating to the contractual relationship and responsibility and expectation of a vendor that we're doing business with.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Right. May I ask you, Mr. Chair, and I realize that KPMG, the consultant, asked the vendor for specific information. The vendor did not comply, not necessarily in all cases, but in the case of not being able to provide the information because they're concerned about confidentiality. How is that treated in other cases? Because I'm presuming this would not be the first time that either a consultant that's looking into a vendor have asked for information that perhaps the vendor is concerned about the proprietary nature of the information and wanting to ensure that it's kept confidential. Is there a mechanism that allows for confidentiality in a case like this?
Councillor Thompson, I just want to get clarity on who you wanted to answer that question. So
I have no idea, Mr. Chair, who should be answering it. I'm presuming there's a bunch of staff in the room that legal, procurement, and so on that handle these contracts. I don't know specifically the staff who are responsible for areas of the contract and awarding, so I'm assuming that somebody who knows would be able to help.
So
I apologize, I don't know who.
So for clarity, it's a process question around, so I think Ms. Matozo is going to take that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to introduce Peter Armstrong from KPMG to answer that question on behalf of the city.
Thank you.
Hi, through the chair. So confidentiality is something that comes up regularly in doing audits, investigations, similar to the one that we're talking about here. There are strategies. In fact, with Duran, we talked about solutions to their raised concern about confidentiality. Those strategies are around using certain tools that forensic accountants, investigators like my firm use to differentiate between relevant information and communications in the case of emails or instant messaging, and things that are other business of the contractor. And generally speaking, as a matter of course, even when using those tools, we will see things. It's not, technology of course is not perfect, it's very good. And the short answer is we respond to the assignment we have and report the findings to our client, in this case, the city. So there are strategies. This is a regular thing that comes up in the course of our business.
So let me just be really clear, hopefully. The question was asked of the respondent, and the response was, we didn't discuss those opportunities, or we didn't discuss that as a mechanism to determine that there were ways to ensure that confidential information could be contained and not released to competitors and so on. You're telling us at this point, you provided, or your organization provided, options in terms of strategy to ensure that proprietary information would be contained and maintained and not be disclosed. Is that what you're telling us?
So to be, through the chair, to be very clear, we had a discussion in December of 2024 with management seated around the table that they raised the concern, and I responded with what I would normally say to the folks that I'm doing the audit on or the investigation, that we have strategies. We discussed, I believe we discussed some of them, including using keywords to identify the right and relevant material and establishing an agreed protocol around how to manage that issue. It didn't progress from there because they took it away at that point to consider it. I think to be fulsome in my answer, one of their concerns was the fact we have an obligation as KPMG to report to the city, and they had raised a concern about information that we would discover in emails, albeit relevant, would where would that would go, and there was a discussion around that. So there was sort of those parts to it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of staff? Seeing none. Members wishing to speak to this item? Seeing none. Would a member like to move the item? Councillor Thompson, you're moving the item?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry I didn't get my hands up in time. I just wanted to say, yes, I will move the item and I will speak just briefly. I want to thank staff and KPMG for doing some great work, and it's unfortunate that we have to take these steps and or these measures and so on, but you know, we have a responsibility and a duty to ensure that the public's interest and the public purse is definitely safeguarded. I don't know, and I can't speak to the operation and the functionality of this organization or this entity, but as it relates to our staff and their integrity and the process that they have followed, which is laid out by our own city policies, which are governed by, you know, edict from council, we have seen fit to bring professional advice and professionals in to help us with respect to the due diligence and fact-finding and garnering information. I find it alarming that we hear that two specific employees of a large organization that has over 150 employees and so on and so forth has gone rogue. And apparently there's no benefits to them, but only that to the company and so on and so forth. Well, I don't know the full details at the moment. Based on the information that's contained in front of me, I certainly cannot vote against the recommendation that staff has indicated. I don't believe it's my first time having to make one of these decisions. And I know that the last time I had to be involved in one of these situations, it was similar information that come forward by the respondent stating that it was only a few people who had done something improper and they had terminated them and so on and so forth. And that may be the case here as it's being told to us. But at the same time, we were also told that the hardship and the problem that would have occurred should the city take in the position that we had taken quite some time ago. And I would have to go back and search and find out exactly what company it was. But this is not the first time that I've seen this. And I'm not aware that that particular company, who at the time told us that they were going to be out of business, that they are in fact out of business. They may be, I just don't know that at this point in time. I'm not convinced that that's the case, that this particular company is going to go out of business. They may, I just don't have that information and I'm not convinced. But I do think it's really important for us to ensure the integrity of our system and the integrity of our process, as well as the effort that has been made in order to get a better sense of understanding of this and so on. And so for those reasons, I'm convinced that what is before us and the advice of staff and the recommendation of staff should be supported by all members of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Any other members wishing to speak to this item? Seeing none, on the recommendations before the committee, all those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries.
Mr. Chair, may I ask for a recording vote, please? Recorded vote.
There's a call for recorded vote. Mr. Clerk, can you go ahead? Okay. All those in favor, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Burnside, Councillor Chang, Councillor Holiday. That is unanimous.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay. Our next item, and members, just so you're aware, Councillor Chang has advised that she wants to reopen a previous item, so we'll get to that at the end of the list. But I'm going to go back to our official list here. So we are at GG 19.24, which is public reporting of performance and service standards. We do have a speaker on this item, Macaulay from the Adasa Advocacy. Welcome to the committee. You have 5 minutes to speak to us. Please begin as soon as you're ready.
Hello. Good morning, Council. So There is a level of exploitation that victims go through before they become survivor-led initiates. Going without pay to strive for integrity and advocacy, victims are subjected to increased targeting and systemic vulnerability, resulting in casualty, fatality, and even death, when governed by policy administered through the City of Toronto. Such challenges are suffered by the victim and not the government worker, who is oftentimes in a position to withhold the client's access to their own identity, as well as intellectual and personal property, producing the identity that Canada claims to be afforded. Institutionally, clients are kept in worker spaces longer than the workers by way of applied programming. Support periods are placed outside of accessible hours for progressive movement, whether you are a student, worker, or a client-centered trauma recovery process victim. It is in these spaces where clients are oftentimes becoming the liaisons for not only interpersonal challenges, but systemic issues as well, displacing them from taking the effective steps towards career-minded social integration, economic independence, and cultural healing. As it pertains to the gender-based care sectors, women, females, and girls are often taken from one abuser and confined to another person whom can exercise the same control and abuse for salary pay and under the protection of workers' policy. Recording of infractions are deemed as combative, aggressive, and restriction-worthy. This is extremely dangerous and echoes the findings of external agency reports. The City of Toronto cannot continue to invest in poor behavior and hide behind lax policies that do not put victims first. Victims are threatened for complaining and challenged, punished both personally and communally, driving fear into the victims of government-initiated worker-client abuse. QNFA must be recognized as a true state of socioeconomic deficit that enables enslavement conditions to be normalized, tolerated, and even concealed by both paid employees and community spectators. Introducing peers programming not only furthered populist division, but worked to incentivize perspectives, removing the desperately required social responsibility that public awareness mustered from the population as a collective. This type of hiring practice reinforces colonizer roles and activity as being the only way to mediate internationally recognized crimes, eliminating decolonized frameworks, further destabilizing high-risk populations for localized institutional crime. If residential schools are a federally registered crime, so too should be the curriculums they offer through the Ministry of Ontario. Among other challenging regularities, which many anti-human trafficking reports have stated would not be supported through government funding, the observed result in overstimulation enabled the direct co-creation of acute needs clientele. Examples of this include the use of clients' bed turnover rates, where social workers depended on mass client restrictions to jumpstart the call for more funding, i.e., workers' compensation. This scam is not only devious, but put at risk desperate clients and system dependence. Despite knowing this, the City of Toronto continued to use such collection of data while leveraging the brand to verify such end results as real, dismissing the fact that the context to which such statistical occurrences had been obtained was under false conditioning, only to be witnessed by the targeted users or users. Meanwhile, incentivized social workers continued to publicly claim that an increase in intolerance, discrimination, and terrorism was allowed to take place so as to provide the remedy, which is solely prolonged terms in abusive systems. These groups have been found to be rewarded for servicing those experiencing anti-Blackness, racism, and gender-based violences, but simultaneously enacted through policy the very same culture that was deemed undesirable by legislation. City of Toronto acknowledged that corporations are culturally classist and use policy to remove and many times justify their guilt. Sexist workers have been found to conduct worse conditions, leaving victims powerless and defenseless in the face of their perpetrators. This foundation cannot be continued means for our system to prove that targeted individuals and groups are vulnerable. Victims are being used by their peers to garner a personal career and salary wage. The City of Toronto needs to rethink its hiring methods and drive to support ethical people who are deserving of the appreciation wage salary.
Thank you, Omo. Are there any questions of the speaker? Seeing none, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff on the item? Seeing none. Members, are there any members wishing to speak? Seeing none, may I have someone move the recommendations that are before us from Councillor Ainsley's letter? Okay, Councillor Cheng moves the recommendations before us. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Okay, our next item is GG 19.26, award of doc 49323-57916 to Ellis Don Civil Limited for the rehabilitation of Kipling Avenue and Islington Avenue and 3 FG Gardner Expressway bridges, ID 229, ID 272, ID 416, ID 417, and ID 423 for engineering and construction services, Ward 3. We have no speakers on this item. I'll ask if anyone has questions of staff. Seeing none, I will just take a moment to ask staff, I mentioned before some transportation-related questions. So I'll run my timer. So these are really important contracts, and they will cause disruption to traveled lanes and access to bridges at the Gardner Expressway in the southern portion, mostly of Etobicoke, and in the city of Toronto. Can someone just give just a brief recap of what's being done to alleviate traffic congestion, which on a good day, never mind the construction, is present?
So through the chair, we've worked very closely with our transportation services colleagues on developing the construction staging and the traffic management plan for the rehabilitation of these 5 bridges. It is critical that these bridges proceed in this time frame, and we've had to develop a plan that allows us to complete all of the work in a very short period of time while minimizing the impact on traffic operations within the vicinity. We have construction staging as a component of that plan. We do have to close lanes on Kipling Avenue and Islington Avenue over the Gardner Expressway while we're rehabilitating those bridges. That work will continue in tandem, so it is completed at as quickly as possible. We also have to close the westbound on-ramp from Park Lawn to the westbound Gardner. That work will require the complete closure of that ramp, but we're not allowing that work to proceed until all of the rehabilitation of the Kipling and Islington bridges are completed, so that there's an alternate route for motorists to access the Gardner Expressway when the Park Lawn on-ramp is closed. So we undertook, as part of the overall plan, the development of a comprehensive traffic simulation model, modeling the area between Parkside, Highway 427, Bloor Street, and Lakeshore Boulevard. We assessed our various traffic restrictions during all the different stages of construction and used those results to plan which lanes would be closed and what type of modifications we would need to make to the traffic control system to account for increases in traffic congestion.
One of the things that occurred recently at the Etobicoke York Community Council was that Community Council moved a prohibition of trucks on Evans Avenue between Islington and Roy York, and that was different than what the advice was from staff, and I wondered if that was or can be integrated into the modeling because that takes away one diversion route used for industry.
That is something, sorry, through the chair, that is something that we could review, and if there would be any impact on the traffic model. But the diversion routes that are planned and presumed in the traffic model when we are closing the on-ramp from Park Lawn Road to the Gardiner Expressway are the Queensway and Lakeshore Boulevard primarily. It's worth mentioning that we have worked extensively with the Ontario Food Terminal, which has an access that goes directly onto that westbound on-ramp, and we've devised a plan in conjunction with the Ontario Food Terminal to reroute their truck traffic easterly on Lakeshore Boulevard so that they can make a U-turn on Windermere and access the Gardiner Expressway from the Lakeshore Boulevard westbound on-ramp.
So there's a motion coming from me because I have concerns about the level of disruption. This is a big, big project, read all together. Could you give me some assurances that you will be able to integrate the impact of this disruption into other decisions that will be made either at the staff level or by community council or council when we consider things such as lane closures or other construction projects in the area because of the compound effect of multiple works?
So through the capital coordination process, there has already been an effort to reduce or eliminate other construction projects in the vicinity of the Gardiner Expressway while this work is going on. For example, there was some work planned on the Queensway in the vicinity of Park Lawn. That has now been deferred until after the construction of these bridges on the Gardiner Expressway is complete.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Any other questions from the members? Seeing none, members wishing to speak, I would love to take an opportunity, so I'll run my clock. Mr. Clerk, could you present the motion? My motion is very simple. It's an ask of the General Manager of Transportation Services working with ECS to really keep an eye on the area with respect to congestions and delays from the bridge work. To my colleagues on the committee that aren't familiar with South Etobicoke, we rely on a number of north and south routes that are parallel and a number of east and west routes that are parallel to the Gardiner Expressway. And on the best of days, they can be very difficult to navigate because of traffic congestion. And this work is very large in scale. It takes away multiples of those entrances, either in sequence or even at the same time. And so that's going to put a lot of pressure on local roads and, sorry, I should say locally located roads that may be minor arterials, or even smaller streets. And you couple that with people just trying to get around, you know, whether they're going to an appointment or a sports event or whatever it is that they do, along with industry that is still present in South Etobicoke. You realize how important this system is to move about. And when we talk about diversions, we talk about like kilometers out of the way. So it's a big deal. So I hope you'll support my amendment. I believe that it's constructive, and it really just asks to pay attention to all of these details. I'm sure that all of the councillors in the West End will be doing this, but I thought it was worthwhile just to add emphasis to it in this decision because it's so important. With that, I will thank everybody, and I say I'm not sure that I look forward to the work ahead. I look forward to working with the Toronto Public Service to make it through a difficult time in our West End of the city. Thank you. Any questions of the mover? Seeing none on the amendment, all those in favor, any opposed, that is carried. And on the item as amended, all those in favor, any opposed, that is carried. Mr. Clerk, we have to go back to, I think, an item. So Councillor Cheng has proposed to reopen GG 19.25, which is related to the 311 reporting. So all those in favor, any opposed, that is carried. The item is reopened. Councillor Cheng.
Yes, I'd like to move a friendly amendment, which we can see on screen. And this is to assess the feasibility of creating sign-ins for our 311 account on the app or the portal. And we have seen through this snowstorm, we have been telling our residents, please file 311 when you see a problem. But when you go to the app, every time you go, you have to fill out exhaustive information about your name, your address, and so that is very time consuming. And once you've submitted, then if you need to track all of your 311s, you have to then go through your emails. It's not a very user-friendly way. And this portal is really our partnership with the community, because they are our eyes and ears on the ground across the city. And so the easier we make it for people to file 311 complaints, the easier it is for us to engage our residents into this way of participating into building a better city. So I think it would be very helpful to be able to sign in to 311, and then you don't have to fill out all that information every time you have a report to file. And then you don't have to, and you can also track all of your requests that you have made through the 311 portal. So this is just a request to assess the feasibility as we look at enhancements for 311. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cheng. Any questions of the mover? Councillor Thompson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Councillor Chang. I wonder, Councillor, if you could maybe just speak to a timeline in terms of responding to your request, because unfortunately, sometimes these things can just kind of linger out there for a long period of time. So I'm just wondering if you could amend, maybe offer an amendment just to bring this back at a certain time.
It would be included in the detailed report back on May 12th, 2025.
Okay, just to make sure
So I think
confirm that you're expecting that at the same time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I guess we can go back. Any other members wishing to speak on the item since it's open? Nope. Okay. So on Councillor Cheng's friendly amendment, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And on the item, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. To my colleagues, don't go away. We do have some bills to move. A confirming bill. Mr. Clerk, could you put that on the screen? Do I have a volunteer that would like to read the confirmatory bill? Councillor Cheng, go ahead.
That confirmatory bill is to confirm the legislative proceedings of the General Government Committee acting under delegated authority at meeting 19 on February 25th, 2025, be declared as bylaws and pass subject to section 226.9 of the City of Toronto Act 2006.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Confirming, Mr. Clerk, do we have any other items of business? We have no other items of business. Therefore, I thank everybody for their participation and their assistance. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Sorry for the last minute. We've been talking.